Hi, today we're going to talk about happenings. Happenings is a unique style of art in that it's an event. It is an activity that an artist or choreographer or group puts together. They usually happen once, um, and they're usually recorded either via video or um, movie or photography. So it is kind of a thing like if you were there and you got to experience it, that's a really cool aspect of it. Um, but not everybody gets to participate. So it's an interesting um, type of work. So I wanted to talk about that today. The person who probably, or for sure did the first happening was Hugo Ball. Hugo was a founding member of the Dada movement. And if you guys recall, the Dada was after World War One, and it was kind of nonsensical. It was art for art's sake. Um, you know, trying to see the world in new and innovative way. The first piece he did was actually this photograph here, where he read the Dada movement thesis, or what they were all about. I did find this video on YouTube just to show you another piece. Hugo is playing the piano. And they would do these performances on stage. They had this little theater, um, and it was called Voltaire. And they would have performances. They would like this film it. Sometimes there would be an audience. Sometimes just other members of the Dada movement. But again, happenings can be very lighthearted, they can be very serious, and then they can be anywhere in between. Um, this one is Yves Klein, and he was falling into the void, is what this one is called, 1960. And he's actually not going to land on his face. This is a photo composition where photographers have pieced this together. There's an image of him falling, yes, but he doesn't fall, 8 feet like this is. He only falls a couple, but they're able to, in the dark room, put these images together. But the idea that he's trying to express here is that art is freedom, and that void, that space is kind of open for every individual's interpretation. So it was like, take the leap with us, come join us, join me in this exploration. Um, you know, I think very interesting, I think provocative, and this is just a really well composed photograph. There are dancers and choreographers. Merck Cunningham was a very highly regarded choreographer, and did a piece. This is just a short little video. This is him here. So he's in the performance, and um, he choreographed the rest of the piece too. So this is very avant-garde. The people are, there's several people in the space. Some are interacting, some aren't. Um, it's kind of on the weird side. This is performance dance. I mean, of course, it's performance, but it's art more than, um, something, more organized and pleasurable. There's actually a really cool video, um, documentary on him that I found, and this is just summing up the rest of his work.
You consider your work avant-garde? Well, I don't know. I don't describe it. I do it. I thought that the ballet technique for the legs was astonishing, and I thought many things in the modern dance were remarkable for the torso. To what end this eternal daily struggle? Because inside of all that is an ecstasy. He demands that you are, first of all, yourself as a human being, and from that, a dancer. We don't interpret something, we present something, we do something, and then any kind of interpretation is left up to anybody looking at it in the audience.
People take Merce at his word. They absolutely believe him that it's only steps that he's putting on the stage, and it isn't true.
Any movement is possible for dancing.
We were different from one another, and he saw those differences.
I think the real thing is the fact that you continue, that you keep on making something.
So this is now on my to see list. John Cage is another performance artist, and he uses sound, his voice. Um, he was a composer and writer and theorist. Here's a piece done in the 60s that was on TV. It's just a short little, I'm only showing you part of it. Again, a performance doesn't always, or I'm sorry, a happening isn't necessarily as smooth as something that's rehearsed a whole bunch of times. And and that's okay. That's kind of part of the rawness and it to happenings. So he has all these objects, he's just making noise. So here's a piece where Cunningham and Cage did a piece together, a collaborative piece. And a lot of times, artists, especially in the 60s, they cross over into and would collaborate on pieces. Happenings were probably most popular in the 60s, although they're still done today. I'm not going to watch this whole thing, just part of it.
When I was growing up in California, there were two things that everyone assumed were good for you. There were, of course, others, spinach and oatmeal, for instance. But right now I'm thinking of sunshine and orange juice. When we lived at Ocean Park, I was sent out every morning to the beach, where I spent the day building roller coasters in the sand, complicated downhill tracks with tunnels and inclines upon which I rolled a small, hard rubber ball. Every day toward noon I fainted, because the sun was too much for me. When I fainted, I didn't fall down, but I couldn't see. There were flocks of black spots wherever I looked. I soon learned to find my way in that blindness to a hamburger stand where I'd ask for something to eat. Sitting in the shade, I'd come to. It took me much longer, about 35 years in fact, to learn that orange juice was not good for me either.
Okay, so that piece again, Cunningham choreographed the dancers and Cage was reading. Yeah. This is Alan Capro, and he would fill galleries with various things, and he would ask the audience to interact. And so, in that respect, sometimes the happenings are very interactive with the audience. It kind of all depends on the way that the artist is interpreting this. So here he's filled a room in a gallery with old tires, and people can walk through them, they can rearrange them, they can just sit around and chat. It really was up to each individual person. Another piece he did was he started kind of writing on the walls of a gallery, and then people could add their stuff, and there's this music playing at the same time. And so, again, interacting with the audience. George McCunas is developed, a system called Flux, and his theory really was that anybody is an artist and anything is art. So he took the Dada aspect and then just kept breaking it down and breaking it down. He really believed that global humanism is created by breaking down the boundaries between the artistic medium, cultural norms, and any kind of political conventions. I'm going to show you, this is another kind of trailer about a movie about him.
George, what exactly is flux, George?
Certainly, you already understand.
He came up with this idea, said, there should be a name for this movement.
He started developing this idea of fluxus, politically based, radical avant-garde.
In hindsight, it was very good that he made it the movement. When you think about it now, do you see that Fluxus is moving everywhere in the world?
I always think of him within information society. What would Fluxus be if Maciunas had the internet?
George, what is flux?
So that's another one that's going on my to watch. This is Sonic Youth destroying a piano or playing a piano, based off of George McCunas' piece. We'll just watch a little bit of this. Here's another one that involved Yoko Ono, where she sat on the stage and people just cut away at her outfit.
Come on, make a piece for Playboy with it.
And did you hear the woman say to the man, "Stop being such a dweeb," when he cut her bra straps? So when you hear Yoko Ono, she was the art piece, and she invited the participants, the audience, to participate, rather. Joseph Beuys is probably one of the most well-known within the art world performance artist. He is German. He's not as probably widely recognized in Germany, but in the rest of the world, people really are always kind of shocked and amazed by his work. We'll look at a little bit of this too.
Aus dem Land, das sich selbst zerstört und uns den Way of Life diktiert. Da kommt Regen, mit Waffen und Tod und hört der Frieden, sieht er
Joseph Beuys was one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. He was also one of the most charismatic and controversial. He blurred the lines between art and life, and believed that socially and spiritually engaged artists had the power to change the world.
My personal history is of interest only insofar as I have tried to use my life and myself as a tool. It was in 1943. My Junkers 87 was hit by Russian anti-aircraft fire, and I crashed in a snowstorm in the Crimea, in the no man's land between the German and the Russian fronts. I was found in the wreckage by a clan of nomadic Tatars. They covered my body in fat to help it regenerate heat, and wrapped it in felt as an insulator to keep the warmth in.
This story was frequently told by Beuys to explain why he used common materials such as fat and felt in his work. It was also mythological. His plane had crashed in the Crimea, but his rescue by the Tatars was a complete fiction. For Beuys, this wasn't important. He saw art as a magical transformative force and believed that a powerful myth contained more truth than everyday reality. This film from 1974 shows Beuys wrapped in felt and being taken on a stretcher to a New York gallery. He's not injured in any way. It's all part of a live art performance, or action as he called them. These actions were intense, ritualistic encounters. and none more so than this one. This is a wild coyote, and Boyce is about to spend 3 days in its company. The coyote was one of the most important symbols in Native American mythology, but European settlers saw it as a pest to be eradicated. By forming a relationship with this coyote, Boyce believed he was helping to heal America's racial and economic wounds.
Each one of us has a creative potential which is hidden by competitiveness and success aggression. Environmental pollution advances parallel with the pollution of the world within us. Hope is denounced as utopian or illusory, and discarded hope breeds violence. It is no longer regarded as romantic, but exceedingly realistic to fight for every tree, every plot of undeveloped land, every stream as yet unpoisoned, every old town center, and against every thoughtless reconstruction scheme.
From the mid-70s on, Boyce used his actions as forums for his political and environmental beliefs. An advocate of grassroots democracy and a founder member of the German Green Party, he went on lecture tours, sketching out his radical ideas on large blackboards. He wanted us to think of society as a giant social sculpture, and ourselves as artists with the power to shape it. During this period, Boyce was a frequent visitor to Scotland. He was drawn here by an intense interest in Celtic mythology, culture, and landscape. This film by Scottish artist Rory McEwen documents his trip to Rannoch Moor with gallerist Richard DeMarco. Boyce found this a profoundly inspiring landscape and paid his respects in his own idiosyncratic way by carving a translucent beating heart out of a slab of gelatine.
I believe that the human being is fundamentally a spiritual being, and that our vision of the world must be extended to encompass all the invisible energies with which we have lost contact, or from which we have become alienated.
Joseph Boyce's methods were often mysterious, but his intentions were clear. He wanted to communicate the social function and healing power of art. The images he created haunt and challenge to this day.
Joseph Boyce is one of those artists that you will see parts of his performance pieces. He does also sculptures and found object kind of installation work. So if you go into a modern museum, you will definitely see his work. That's for sure. Very provocative, very interesting, kind of weird artist. Now, there's a whole thing that kind of happens in the 70s and 80s, and Stuart Brisley did this piece where there was a bunch of gunk and trash, and he lived and in a bathtub for like 3 days, never getting out with all this stuff. I'm not sure, this to me, I can imagine the smell, and to me, it sounds very, very disgusting. I don't necessarily know if I think this is art, but, with performances and the philosophies of Dadaism and Fluxus and all of that, yeah, it is, because they say so. So Stuart Brisley is a British artist. He does some kind of, like I said, kind of gross, interesting work. Chris Burden does performances, but in a really dangerous way. He, had some experiences in life where he almost died. And so he keeps trying to recreate that experience, and that pain experience. In this photograph, what he did was he lay down on the ground at a stop sign, and he's covered in dark material. And this was at night. The only things illuminating him are those two lights you see on the ground. And they're flares, and they're right in front of his body. So if a car didn't see him or move quick enough, he would have been hit by a car. All right. So he's going for that danger feeling, that adrenaline rush that you get. In 1970s, he asks his friend to shoot him with a rifle. That was the performance piece. This little video is like 12 seconds long. It just shows the actual shooting. So they're about probably 20 feet apart ish. And that's it. I don't know guns. It's a small rifle. You can see in the photograph. He goes to the hospital, obviously, because it hurt. And, even back then they had to find out how he got shot. And so there was this investigation. He's like, no, I did it for the sake of art. And the police and the hospital just kind of, rolled their eyes. But, this is the kind of thing that he was interested in. It is what it is. Carolee Schneemann is a feminist artist, and she wrote some words and then put them in her vagina, and then came out onto stage, pulled the scroll from her vagina and read it, and it was a feminist narrative. About being, issues dealing with the woman during the time. Other things that she has done is she has strapped herself inside this swing and had pencils or paint, ink, or whatever, and she swings around and she makes these markings. And this is kind of what you might see if you go into a gallery now, because it's a one-time thing. So if that one-time event becomes recognizable, or she wants to show it, she can't do the whole thing and be there all day. So they have to figure out creative ways of showing it in a gallery. Martha Rosler, who I think I introduced you guys to in a social and political art. She had a yard sale in a museum, like a real yard sale where people go and buy stuff, and then she would fill it up, at night. And so again, it's a happening, it's interactive, and you're buying stuff. Martin Creed, this is kind of interesting, and I'm gonna let you guys watch this because it's coming from, you hear about the artist and the reasoning and things like that. So I think it's very insightful. This was done in the Tate Museum in London.
This work is work number 850 or 850. I can't always think how to title things, so I always use numbers just to have a way of identifying what I do, what I try to do. But and the work it consists of people running through the gallery, or it consists of a person running through the gallery every 30 seconds. I was asked by the Tate if I could think that I might imagine making something for the Devine galleries, and immediately this is what I thought of, and I thought that the Devine galleries, being so long, were a good theatre for this work, because it's almost the length of, say, a sprinting, like an indoor sprinting track. If I think about running and why it is that I like it, I think that it is perhaps because it's an exciting action, and I think it's also an example of being alive. If you think of death as being still, perfectly still, and so the opposite of death would be, you know, to move as fast as you possibly can. And I think of art, or the experience of art, always as a live experience. You know, a painting may be a fixed, static object, but the experience of looking at a painting is always a live one, because people are alive and constantly moving, you know, the heart's beating. So the experience of looking at things is always in movement, you know, and in my mind there isn't such a leap from a painting to a person running in the gallery, you know, which is of course a moving or kinetic work. That's not necessarily, you know, why I made this piece. I made the piece, I think, originally, when I thought about it, because I thought it was funny, really, you know, and it makes me smile, you know, when I see people running through the gallery, you know. When I was working on the piece, I was thinking that, you know, like in the street, if you're in the street and someone runs past, you know, it's often can be quite shocking, like, oh, what's happening, you know, like, has there been a theft or a, you know, like a shoplifter running away from the police or something like that. It can be quite shocking when you see someone running in the street. So I think running in general stands out, you know. Probably the one place it wouldn't stand out would be like an athletics meeting. You know, so that would probably be not the place to display the running piece, you know. You know, artists do not make art. Artists make things, you know, objects, whatever it may be, paintings, sculptures. They make stupid objects which get used as art, you know, by human beings. So, you know, so someone should not, and I'm actually not the person to ask about whether this is art, because it's not me that decides if something's art or not, you know. The person asking that question can, you know, decide for themselves, or should you know, question in general the fact that certain objects are used and treated as art by, you know, the general world that we live in, you know. You know, art's just a word, you know.
Okay, the last artist I'm going to show you is Marina Abramović, and she is currently one of the most recognized happening artists that we have. She's along with Martin Creed, you know, she's doing works now. She had a really remarkable show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York several years ago. But, you know, this kind of, she's really just an amazing artist. So let's watch this one.
Marina Abramović is not known for painting canvases or shaping clay. She's a performance artist, and for 40 years she's been making art with her own body. In 2010, she staged her most famous performance to date, The Artist is Present. Abramović sat silently in a chair at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City for 3 months, and people gazed into her eyes.
Tell me about what happens when you're sitting across from someone.
You open the soul, because that is everything there.
Some of the 750,000 souls who heeded her call seemed hypnotized. Some wept. As for Abramovich, sitting still for hours at a time caused pain in her hands, legs, and her spine.
If you're doing pain and understanding that you can control the pain and you can liberate yourself from the pain, then pain is okay.
But you might say that pain is Marina Abramovich's medium, and her message, deal with it. Back in 1973, she rhythmically jabbed the spaces between her fingers, at times drawing blood. Shocking stuff, but to hear the art world tell it, serious, important work that breaks boundaries.
I mean, it's greatness. That's it, simply.
Sean Kelly was the first gallery owner to represent her work internationally.
And I think that Marina's profound ability to touch people comes from the fact that she never felt she was loved enough.
She was born in 1946 in Belgrade, then the capital of Yugoslavia. Her parents argued violently with each other, and Abramovich says her mother beat her.
The worse childhood you have, the better artist you become, because you have things to work with. And just the fact that my mother never kissed me, it was such a huge, painful thing in my life and damaged me so much.
Were you wilder as a young woman, as a teenager?
I was black sheep completely all my life. I was absolutely rebel. I had to be rebel. I have to rebel everything and everybody to create my own space.
It was a space, says Abramovich, that was hers and hers alone.
When I was starting the performance art, it was nobody territory. Everybody was thinking it's ridiculous. Everybody thinking that was the not art in the first place. So it took me all my life. For years, people ask, why is this art?
When do you think that stopped?
I think after MoMA show.
Unlike her legendary show at the Museum of Modern Art, this is not performance art.
So here we are doing experiments, and basically experiments of my brain.
Because she's known as someone with remarkable mind control, neuroscientists recently brought her to an historic soundproof chamber at Bell Labs in New Jersey.
We are measuring the differences in her brain as she's changing her mental state.
To watch her brain waves as she made sounds. Being the subject of experiments, putting one's body through years of painful performances, and planning new shows can take a toll on an artist.
So do you get to spend a good deal of time up here?
Since 2007, she's come to this star-shaped house in upstate New York to recharge.
What do you call this place?
My paradise.
Yeah.
Abramovich was married twice, and for 12 years lived and worked with another performance artist, a West German known as Ulay. Yes, the slapping was performance, but today she is here alone.
So there are lots of things here.
Her archives are here.
And they're all labeled and numbered.
Yes.
Wow.
And there are 26 acres of meadows and orchards.
You know, we can learn from nature. Nature is a big, big teacher, which we forgot.
Her favorite tree is here.
Everybody have to find his own tree, you know? Try.
Yeah.
Say hello.
I like it.
But really, and then just, you know.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. When you get to come into nature and hug it.
And we hug together.
This is the hut where she meditates, which is just what Lady Gaga did when she came here last year to study Abramovich's meditation techniques.
She's a good student. She doesn't cheat. She goes all the way.
Abramovich's current show goes all the way to nearly nothingness. Here's the empty Sean Kelly Gallery.
There's no art on the walls.
Nothing.
And it's absolutely nothing to sell, as you see. And then I'm going to put headphones.
Okay.
She asks the audience to put on noise-canceling headphones, wear a blindfold, and make the performance themselves.
I care about ideas I'm afraid of. I care about ideas who are terribly disturbing, that I say, oh my God, how I can do that? That's the idea I want.
Her next idea is to raise funds to build an institute in upstate New York to present and preserve performance art. And recently, she thanked hundreds of her donors with hugs.
I hugged 600 people that day. It was from the morning till the late evening. I stayed there and hugged every single person. And that was very moving moment, very moving.
So today, the little girl who never felt enough love gets more than most people could handle.
Okay, so your assignment this week is, do you think that these performances, these happenings, is art? And be specific. You will respond in a discussion board thread, and use specific artists from this video to defend your answer. Okay, it's just a discussion board response, so just paragraph or something. Be critical, as you've learned with use entertaining language, descriptive words, and there has to be a definite yes or no. It cannot be a maybe. Okay, have a great week.